Hey, what's up, everyone? Doing another video just because I'm feeling pretty energized and motivated today. Actually, the past few days, I've been feeling more motivated and energized. Really quickly, what I want to talk about is a quick recap of kind of this week, or at least the past few days. And then I've been inspired by a comment and, kind of a little bit of a conversation from someone else online about their use of nitrous oxide and how they, unfortunately, were not able to fully recover and, can't do some activities like run and jump. So it just made me do a lot of thinking over the past few days. But to recap, I've been much more active than, in a long time. I've worked out, lifted weights a few times this week. And then today was my fourth consecutive day of bike riding. Granted, with the weightlifting, it wasn't a huge amount of weights. And with the bike, it's not like it was, 20 miles or 30 miles. But, at least it was a good amount. And of course, I need to keep in mind I'm really out of shape. So, and it's better than doing nothing. So that's been going really well. Treatment's going really well. We go back to in-person starting on Monday, which is nice because, it's going to be more effective. And there's a cafe that's focused on recovery that is nearby that I go to, that I'll be able to go more frequently because of the proximity. So that's going well. Everything's going well at the house. I'm just very thankful. And again, with the comment, I'm just very grateful of how things have played out for me. I just want to talk about kind of all of the physical adverse effects the laughing gas had in the amount that I abused and the duration, and amazingly, was able to walk away relatively unscarred. There's still some effects that linger. Like I do still have some neuropathy in my extremities, which is some tingling. It's a little painful. It's not terribly painful though. And then, if I really overexert myself, I will be a bit wobbly on my feet. Not a whole bunch, but a little bit, which is noticeable to, others. But yeah, so I guess I'll start there. I'm very fortunate because, I've also been looking online and seen some videos of other people that have abused laughing gas, and some of them were walking, but it was very unsteady. They weren't able to they didn't have the dexterity or strength in their hands, and even all the way up to being so affected where they had to be in a wheelchair. I don't know whether they recovered or not, or how much they recovered, but fortunately I was not at the point where, well, I guess I did need I could have used a wheelchair, but I'm very fortunate to where I definitely don't need it now. So at the bare, so with the nitrous, with the physical effects, at the bare minimum, you're dealing with asphyxiation. Obviously, the nitrous oxide in the canisters it's pure nitrous oxide. There's no oxygen in there, and I'm sure with other abusers of the substance, I would try to maximize the amount of nitrous oxide going into my lungs, and then therefore had to minimize the amount of air I was breathing. When I would get my usual amount of nitrous oxide, 250 to 400. I would just breeze through it one by one. I would inhale from the dispenser until it was empty, and then while holding that in, twist off out the empty canister, toss it, grab a new one, and then twist it onto the dispenser, and so that way it's filled. And then, pretty quickly after, inhale that. It's really hard to say because, my senses and perception was so affected. But I would say I took very little breaths in between those canisters. So that alone it just amazes me that I did not suffer any sort of significant cognitive effects or physical effects on my body, or especially death. So that blows my mind, honestly, to this day. And that's something I'm incredibly grateful for. But then also, you have the vitamin B12 deficiency, depletion, that occurs during, long bouts of nitrous oxide abuse. And I'm sure it varies individual to individual. There might be some that use less or less long, like a lesser duration, and experience that. But yeah, that's something that had happened to me. I eventually, I think I talked about this briefly, but I eventually went into the emergency department because one of my good friends had urged me. I knew enough that it was very likely that my walk-in and just overall nervous system would not be restored, because typically effects like that are irreversible. There are cases such myself as where that is reversible, but for the most part, irreversible. So I just was like, why go in? There's really nothing they can do for me. And but I did eventually go in. There's not much they could do for me. They ran some saline through my body. I don't know why. But they did also give me vitamin B12. It was orally. It was PO. It wasn't intramuscularly. And typically IM B12 is absorbed and utilized a lot better by the body. But I don't think I even filled the script. They gave me some during my stay, but I don't think I even filled the script, just because the logistics of getting to the pharmacy in my state. And again, I just told myself there's no point because this isn't going to get any better. So they did do some blood work. They did check my vitamin B12 levels, which surprisingly was within normal limits. I had, a proper amount of B12 in my bloodstream, which I don't quite know why. I really don't remember, but I'm sure that my use had really petered off, or maybe even completely stopped, because that's about the time I was pretty much completely broke, and unable to get outside, and especially drive to the store to buy more. So I'm sure my B12 levels probably came back, but they did do another blood test for something that is called methylmalonic acid. It's a metabolite in the metabolism that goes on in the cells, and a buildup of that can also indicate vitamin B12 deficiency. My level was like 4,100 something, which was about 10 times the upper range of a normal amount. So pretty conclusive in terms of what was going on. They did refer me to do it was an MRI or CT scan, something to, look at my nervous system, especially the spinal column, and, see the extent and where the damage was. And they also, referred me to physical therapy, because PT probably would have helped, even if my nerves didn't get better, probably would have helped a bit in terms of adjusting to the, inability to walk, and then, of course, eventually the balance issues and being wobbly on my feet. I didn't go to either of those. I didn't do either of those. I was just so defeated and hopeless. And again, I knew that typically it's irreversible, so I just didn't see the point. So I didn't go. So it really is miraculous that it took quite a bit of time, but for me to regain my function. Sorry to bring up higher powers and stuff, but I'm incredibly grateful to God for, one, being alive, living through all that abuse, but two, having my mind and my body mostly intact. So I guess the last thing I'll mention with that, maybe I'll do another video on kind of the progression, but over time of cessation of the laughing gas, I was able to start standing up, and then eventually balance, and then eventually walk. I did walk with a limp, and was pretty unsteady on my feet, but I was able to walk. It was limited to very small increments. And then, of course, that went all the way up. There's more stages, but eventually, to the point where I could walk and even run, bike ride, jump, mostly fine. One last thing I'll mention about that is when the nerve damage first occurred, I had drop foot, and as well as pretty much being, I think maybe a smidge, but I want to say not at all. I could not curl my toes, and really have much function at all in just my foot and my calves. But now I can sit here and be able to curl my toes for the most part. I mean, they're a little numb to sensory input. Touching them, I can feel the pressure, but not so much the fine touch. So I just wanted to bring that up too. It's just, it was a really interesting experience, really scary. And, again, I was just so hopeless. I just, said, screw it, whatever. So there's that. And then, just the gas itself in terms of, its physical properties. I'm not sure if anyone's ever used them to make whipped cream, for their coffee. I'm sure you've seen it in Starbucks at the very least. But each of those canisters does contain a decent amount of gas when, and it's very cold and it's very compressed. So, it can fill up one canister can fill up a balloon pretty decently sized. Which some people do, and they inhale from the balloon instead of directly from the dispenser, because that obviously is less safe because of the temperature and pressure. And another thing to note too is with the canisters, I think it's the way they're machined, but each one, in addition to the gas, has an oily, gross residue, and it's brownish, blackish. And there's some pictures. When held under a microscope, it's essentially metal fragments, which makes sense, because the canister is made of metal. So there's a pretty minute amount in there. So if you're making whipped cream or, using a few of them, probably not a big deal. But when you start abusing thousands of them, it starts to become more problematic. I would go through several hundred or, 1,000 or two and then open up the dispenser and, you know, tip it over, and it would just be a ton of that black sludge. Because I would occasionally clean them out for that very reason. Because the more stuff that's in there, the more, you know, you're probably inhaling. And yeah, and then also on the top part, just completely gunked up. Absolutely disgusting. I mean, you could even see it in the nozzle. It would eventually start turning darker. So what I did, and I know it's not, you know, 100% effective. I don't know how effective it really was, but I would cut a few squares of cloth from, you know, old clothing, and put it over the top of the nozzle, rubber band it, and then I would duct tape it so that way, you know, because me, I'm really, I try to focus, probably neurotically so, I focus on efficiency, like the very small things. So I wanted to make sure that very little, if any, gas had escaped, because obviously the less gas that's going into your lungs, the less effect. So I would do that, and then, you know, with the intention of the cloth kind of catching that oil and that metal. And it did, well, I guess, okay, yeah, it did kind of work to some degree, because, you know, if I use white cloth, you know, after quite a bit of, well, even like a moderate bit of use, you could see the color. You could see the color change when, you know, taking it off. So I would replace that occasionally as well. So yeah, I can't imagine how much of that went into my lungs. It's crazy. And then again, you know, with the physical properties, I mean, all that cold compressed gas going into my lungs. I don't know, you know, the boiling point of nitrous oxide, but I do know it's pretty cold. It's interesting. After repeated use, the dispenser will start to ice up top. But I had been abusing so much and so frequently that, you know, during a pretty substantial binge, you know, like if I got 400, especially multiple times a day, the dispenser would ice over because it was just so cold. It was, you know, turning the humidity in the air into ice. And it was so bad that my right hand, where I, you know, would typically hold it, I developed, I don't know if I could say like with confidence, you know, was a nurse, not a doctor, but, you know, like at least first, if not second degree type burns on 3 of my fingers. They were really bad. So, but because I would be so numb, you know, nitrous is an anesthetic. It's used in dentistry, sometimes surgery. But so I'd be so numb. I mean, at the time, I wouldn't feel it. But yeah, so that really screwed up my hand. And then with the cloth up top, typically I'd have it in my mouth, because again, I wanted to kind of create a seal and not lose any of the nitrous. It would get wet from my, you know, saliva, and then of course, because there's cold gas passing through it for a decent duration, that saliva would ice over. So I had pretty much most of my mouth and tongue was completely raw and like covered in like sores, essentially, because when it would freeze, and typically I would have it kind of against my cheek or whatnot, it would get stuck to the skin, you know, no different than putting your tongue on a cold pole in the middle of winter, you know, having it get stuck. And then, of course, being ripped off. And again, I mean, I was just so deep in the nitrous that I did not notice the pain. Of course, in between uses, and especially when I had finally stopped, it was noticeable, very noticeable. I really could not eat any food, which probably contributed to the vitamin B12 deficiency. but I could really barely eat food. But at the time, I mean, food was like one of the last things on my mind. I mean, it was just constantly nitrous. My self-care was abysmal. So yeah, I guess I'm going to end kind of here. I just wanted to talk more about the physical effects. I definitely want to get into the, mania, psychosis, delusions, because that's a story for another time. It was definitely an interesting experience, to say the least. But yeah, so given all those factors, with the cold compression, filled with some amounts of oil and microscopic metal shards, the coldness of it, the fact that it's not oxygen or air, and then the vitamin B12 deficiency, I'm just, sometimes I question, why me? Like, why was I able to walk out of that situation of such substantial nitrous abuse and eventually able to recover for the most part? When others use it and, sadly they have the disability, whether that's unable to run or jump, or not be able to get around without a wheelchair. It's just like, why am I, especially with being an addict, I've definitely done a lot of questionable things and a lot of crappy things. So, it's like, why am I not dead, and why am I not disabled, at the very least? But I am very thankful. I am very grateful. That's something I think about pretty frequently, and I express my gratitude. I think expressing gratitude can be a very powerful tool. And I think that's kind of also why I've been doing really well this week. But it's just, I don't know. It's interesting. I really hope that with also these videos, it might. People might see it that are, or about to abuse nitrous oxide, and maybe it'll deter them, or at least practice more safely. Because I just, having that happen to other people, I really would like to not see that happen. So yeah, I'm gonna end it here. Again, more videos to come. I really appreciate everyone that is watching. Hopefully you can take something away from these, or at least it's interesting. So yeah, thank you for listening. I will see you guys next time.